Hello, this is Mike, NoStressMike.com. I want to talk about a little bit about my culture, and and the reason I want to talk about it is, I say I'm half Chinese, and the American half is Choctaw Indian, Irish, and Welsh. And the Chinese side, the culture, I'm very proud of, and it's a good thing in the way of what it's developed throughout the years. Now, don't get the culture mixed up with the political stuff. That's the communist Chinese. The communist is a political stand. That's completely different than the cultural thing. And this is the thing that I want to talk about. Is there's one of the main things that you can judge the Communist Party by is, let's see, what was it, the Book of War, or something like that. And it's a Chinese, some Chinese guy wrote it. And the thing is, one of the big things is perception. And this is what the Communist Party is doing, the Chinese Communist Party is doing, is it starts with perception. I mentioned it when I was living in Guatemala, down Central America, and because there's a lot of main highways that are made, financed, and a lot of the production was made by Asian countries, Japan, Korea, and China. And they even done the same thing with harbors. Some harbors have been worked over, financed. The Chinese government completely financed all this stuff to these countries that there's no way these countries are going to be able to pay it back. And when they do that, now you are in debt. That's where, you don't hear me talk a lot about it, but that's something I thought everybody knows, is when you are in financial debt, you are a slave. You are a servant to whoever you owe it to. That's why you stay out of debt, and that's why I'm in the gold and silver. It limits, I mean, if I was in debt, well, man, I'd have a nice fancy house, fancy vehicles, fancy all kinds of stuff. But I chose not to be a servant. And this is what happens to a lot of these countries. But I've also noticed China, they're doing other ways of trying to change the perception. And one of the things they try to make a big deal about the culture, and that is a good deal. Share your culture. I don't care what culture you're from. I think it's a good idea to see it and learn from it. And but what they've done is, and I wish I knew the names, but I forgot all the names. But there's a cultural Chinese kind of thing, and it's sponsored by the Communist government. Okay, remember, politicians are no different when they're communist or they're corrupt American politicians. They've got a goal, in mind. And as long as their goal is for the people, it's different than what it is when it's for their party or for themselves. And so what they've done is they've done a thing called sister cities, and they would compare one of the cities in China to one of the cities here in the United States. And it's not just the United States, they do it all over the world. This is what I'm saying. They're changing the perception. And when you become a sister city, then you recognize that there's only one China, and that's the Taiwan. They forget Taiwan. That's just one of the parts of China. That's what they're doing. So they get their foothold, and I was shocked to find out how they do it in cities. Why would they care about cities? And now with all this crazy crap going on here in the United States, you can see where cities are so corrupt. I thought the federal government was the most corrupt thing there was. I mean, all governments, the main government's always corrupt. And it never dawned on me how corrupt these cities are. But then remember, I don't live in a city. I avoid cities. And so this is what I've noticed is they're going into cities, universities. Oh man, I can't believe how much money the Chinese government has given to universities. And I thought, are universities, this is where I've changed my perception on college education, because I've learned it's not an education like we would think of an education, getting smarter. It's a brainwashing kind of perception is what they're getting in there. And here in the United States, equal rights and all that. Well, they try to do the same thing. Well, it's equal. I mean, we're poor Chinese, and look at our rich culture and all this. And then, but once you take their money, there's certain requirements. And one of those requirements, and you'll see, I wonder, now I think about it, I wonder if you look at a globe in a university, and look to see if you see Taiwan as a separate country than China. If it's not, I would guess that university collected money from China. So, in other words, corruption is not only in government, all levels of government, but it's also in our universities and business. Man, look at Nike. Let's see, was it the basketball? I think it was basketball. They wanted to sign a contract with China, and so to do that, you have to recognize and understand there's certain things that, China's different. This is what they say. But they're not. They're just plain old corrupt. And they try to brainwash. And they try to change not only history, they're doing just like what they're doing now with taking down the statues and stuff like that. China did the same thing. When the Communist Party took over in 1949, they started destroying statues and erasing the history of China. And I noticed it when I was living in China here, 2017, 2018, whenever I was living over there. A lot of the younger people didn't realize how much history China has. And history is always filled with good and bad and all. I mean, not only we as human beings, our history shows where we've made mistakes and we've paid for our mistakes, or we've ignored it, or whatever happened. But for them, it was to erase history. That's what's going on here when they're destroying all the heritage that the United States has got. Even though we only have a little over 200 years, there is something there. This country, we are free. We have freedoms. We've got rights. Where do these rights come from? Yes, they come from the Constitution, but it's recognized that there are God-given rights. I don't think you find that. I don't think you find that anywhere in the world, only in the United States. But they want us to forget that. Get rid of the Constitution because the Constitution recognizes God-given rights. Well, they don't want us to know all this. This is what I'm saying. They're dumbing us down. That's why our younger generations they've been dumbed down pretty good. But it's not all China's fault. I'm not giving them all the blame, but they have a big part in it. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. This is Mike, NoStressMike.com.